Works, because that's the name of the channel I started. So if you guys don't want me to film you tonight, just tell me not to. But actually, I have 3 poems tonight. You know, since we had so most of our cast usually has been ladies for a while. I just figured, you know, since I've already written poems for Dave and Tom, it's their turn. Okay, starting off, I said, with you, Catherine.
Thank you, sir.
Carefully molding others for the future is something everyone should experience and continue. Done properly, bright eyes and smiles with enlightened minds blossom like a rare flower, empowering those to look forward to meeting new people and helping the various lost souls find their way through the fog of perpetually generated by life, which takes enough effort to gain a few steps onto safer ground and clearer vision to find the path bringing the most peace. Hide your doubts so that the coldness of uncertainty won't steal your fire for lasting happiness. Invite new people and things to feel their energies, to kindle the one lying inside of you, to join the world, feeling refreshed, knowing you helped others when they needed guidance. Kind gestures such as keeping a smile when others find too easy to fall into despair, whenever life is less than fair, and letting others have a meal of the good life when others haven't tasted minute amount of hope, to prove the fog lifts long enough to reveal the prize we all seek and need, to give us purpose with light shining on us so that we don't have to spend so much time outside our comfort zone, so to further obscure the path back to serenity with our friends. Precious moments can be made at any moment, so be kind to those around you and try to quiet the storm brewing inside the brain and heart, meant for allowing the dense fog to go to quickly return, to prevent a proper look at the roads before and behind, to find some place that feels safe enough, so that despair can't find many places, you can't find many people, and easily lead them onto an unfamiliar path towards trouble with a dish to prevent escape after a few moments before the darkness works its magic. Uncertainty comes with life in order to make things interesting, even if it makes the chances of victory go downhill. But overcoming hardships makes the triumph far more sweeter. From the work that comes from having a friend who wants you to succeed, in your many endeavors, to exceed your goals by creating new ones, to challenge what society expects from us, to keep the mold yielding too many in the fast lane without a clue of how long they will last on the strange path. To zoos full of people who peak too early and have to find a new way through life where others wait, all too eager to prove that everyone deserves a second and lengthy chance to get things right. Believe in yourself and others will do the same, with the light of a smile, to light the way to greatness. And as a teacher, I think that's a pretty good mantra. Even though she's not here, I'll read Sherry's and close your eyes and take a deep breath whenever you feel the world is a little too scary, to safely bask in everything that made you happy before arriving at this less than pleasant moment. All across the world, there are people who find it hard to connect with others, often in large zones meant for having fun, with too many strangers who are caught up in the growing chaos, yelling at the top of their lungs from feeling that their soft voice can't be silenced, and staying as Xenia is pushed to the side, for the rush of the moment that will sadly pass as quickly as it arrived. Within quiet places, those who are shy can summon courage to introduce themselves to a person verbally restrained, but all too eager to talk once the anxiety passes and friendly smiles take over. Understanding others isn't impossible. However, not everyone is able to use their voice out loud. Talking for long periods of time about odd subjects and hope they don't say the wrong thing, souring the conversation, and leaving feelings of regret with a desire to leave for a dark corner. Reach deep and find what makes you happy, and share those wonders with those unable to speak. Quivering in their boots, whenever a few too many new faces enters the crowd and come close. Peace is what we make, and knowing that you made someone else smile makes your world a little, let's say, open to blue skies, soft grass, sweet flowers, and a warm sun to preserve the happiness of times. So never give up when you're sad for a little while, because we need to feel sorrow as much as joy to meld our emotions so that we remain whole and not a machine only able to project one state, looking like there are no other ways to feel until the floodgates break and everything that you've kept suppressed for so long is finally coming out, and not in a good way that invites others to join in the catharsis with everyone falling apart from being forced to act the way society demands. Incredible things can reach amazing heights. However, that doesn't mean they can't begin from more humble environments like a small town with people who care about those around them and want to grow at their own rate instead of hitting the gas and hoping for only a few tiny obstacles in their way. Find your voice so that others who want to listen can hear the wonders of a person usually so silent. Enjoy life the best you can and be glad that you're able to continue being yourself and be able to discover how wonderful you always were with those who enjoy your company. And last one is for Marshall Lee. Okay, many men in this world need a strong woman to help them through the trials of life. However, not every bachelor is fortunate to find such a kind soul to provide the much needed guidance. Open hearts can be a blessing and a curse because people can find polite people for a little while, pacifying the period of time spent together to distract from the darkness since their last meeting. Said quieted from the light of friends, said for one another, sharing stories and advice for returning to normal life and how to prepare for obstacles that everyone encounters at some strange part in the long road called existence, meant to provide experience on how to endure trouble and overcoming similar circumstances in a shorter amount of time to skip the misery, and utilizing the trials to become a better person or group if you have someone to share life. Veterans often need a little more attention because of the battles they fought and want to forget, wishing that the world didn't require so much combat to compensate for a lack of compassion. Exciting tales of coming out alive can be eclipsed instead of watching others not make it, or gain a yammering future instead for the next wave of soldiers, and why going off to war isn't too glorious when zapped by the older soldiers who've seen a lot worse and are very eager to lead out the weak. A loving spouse can be the best thing in this world because it's a sign that your old life is over and better things begin now without much fear of being brought back into the fray from someone's careless thinking and wanting to create more chaos without as many souls to share the conflict. Deep within everyone's hearts is room for compassion, and keeping it all for yourself is a real shame, and engaging with those around you after they've made you smile, you often found difficult to find the strength instead not to frown for even a few moments when the world wasn't as nearly depressing. Good friends are one of the best things I've been lucky to have in this room. And when I see two holding hands, I know that their lives are to be admired. Finding a friend for life is a true miracle. Imagining a distant future with the one you love has to be one of the greatest journeys in this world. Jamming to the music you've created with a playlist getting longer and playing every nice moment. Keeping the fire burning so that the world is less cold and unfriendly so that others can do the same. Love the one you're with and provide support for those who are still looking for such a blessing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This thing's called 1861.
Okay.
Remember it well?
That was a while back. They called us young boys off to that war without fully explaining what we were fighting for, except that there was a war and we had to fight. They told us there was a war and we had to fight. Because the North was a strangling the South, they said, yet men could be bought for $500 a head. And the war would show everybody who was wrong and right. They said the war would show everybody who was wrong and right. So we fought at Bull Run, Antietam too. Down at Vicksburg, we lost quite a few. Though the generals kept telling us, boys, we're winning this thing. Yeah, the generals kept telling us, boys, we're winning this thing. But we kept dreaming about our farms and wondering why we'd ever taken up arms. Back in '61, what a beautiful spring. I remember '61. It was a beautiful spring. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. Then Lincoln freed the people at Gettysburg. General Lee surrendered. Have you heard? And that awful bloody war started coming to an end. Yeah, that awful bloody war started coming to an end. But too many thousand who had worn blue and gray are calling to us still from cold, cold graves, saying nobody ever needs to go through that again. They're saying nobody ever needs to go through that again. And we hold these truths to be self-evident. Do we hold these truths to be self-evident?
Gary, you make me think a little bit. I've started trying to write a memoir, a little bit of more healing from Nam, and I have read part of the memoir here to you guys, but I've gone into the second part, which is the timber and logging after I came back from Nam, and some of my first experiences were buying timber down on the res. So I'm going to read a little piece here. I started working for W.C. Hennessy Lumber Company the fall after I graduated from college. My main job was cleanup man at the mill at night, but occasionally I would help run the main resaw, which sawed the large cants, or the edger saw, which taught me a lot about lumber quality. Sometimes during the day, if I didn't have classes, the head forester, Charlie Woodard, would take me out onto the logging jobs. It was a great experience for me, and it enabled Mr. Woodard to get a feel for what kind of man I was. I guess he felt I was worth hiring because several weeks before I graduated, he offered me a job. I'd driven out to DeQueens, Arkansas a few months before to interview for a job with Weyerhaeuser Lumber Company and was offered a job with them, but DeQueens was in the southwest corner of Arkansas. It was flat, it was a dry county, and mostly pine timber.
Ooh.
I liked the mountains, I liked cold beer, and I liked Appalachian hardwood. So I said, thank you, but no thank you, and drove back home. I kind of thought Charlie Woodard would offer me a job. Luckily, I was right. My primary job was logging supervision at the time, and I worked with 6 or 8 different logging crews scattered over western North Carolina and North Georgia. I also began working on the Cherokee Indian Reservation. An old friend of Charlie Woodard's by the name of John Glowen was the head forester on the reservation, and we bought a lot of timber down there. One of the first jobs I had, I was assigned to check on, was being logged with a pair of steers on Washington Creek by an old boy named Little John. I've forgotten his first name, but it was interesting to watch him work those steers, very much like the old days. There were several Little Johns logging down there at that time. Most were good loggers, but a couple had to be watched pretty closely. There was a small sawmill down at Eland. It was run by people who would buy logs knowing full well that they came from our job. Some people would steal almost anything. I became good friends with several Cherokee loggers, Jess Littlejohn, Charles Inslee, whose son B is vice chief now, a guy by the name of Harold Bradley, who was sometimes called Sonny Tolley, and Josh Tanita. But I guess Deweese Wolf was the guy that I got to know the best. I ate several suppers with him and his mom and dad at his place. I'll tell you one story about logging on the res. We bought a good tract of timber up on the head of Big Cove, up near the park. Deweese and his brothers were logging it for us. Now you need to know that Big Cove was a rough neighborhood back in the mid-70s. A white man needed to be very careful about being up there after dark. Well, it was early fall and it was getting late when I left the logging job. Deweese was chaining down the load and would be right behind me as I drove out. The logging road was gravel from where the tribal maintenance ended, and it was probably 2 miles up to where we were logging. I was in my pickup truck, so I was 2 or 3 minutes ahead of the log truck. There was a narrow bridge across the main creek that we had used in order to reach the pavement. 5 or 6 neighborhood toughs sat on that bridge railing, drinking beer. When they saw me, they stepped out onto the road. A damn white guy. I could see it in their eyes. I stopped my truck and wondered for a second what I should do. There was no way I was going to let them drag me out of my truck. It had only been a few months since a guy had been dragged out of his truck and nearly beaten to death in a riot somewhere. I don't remember where it was. I would just run their asses over. It was that simple. They looked at me and I stared at them. It was during this standoff that Deweese Wolf pulled up behind me in his log truck. His brothers were right behind him in their work truck. Now the Wolf boys had a reputation of their own. Don't mess with us. I watched as the tough guys looked back at Deweese, who stared them in the eye. Nothing was said, but the toughs sat down on the railing and we drove across that bridge. Nothing ever was said about that episode, but I always left the job before dark after that.
So this is a piece that's just a little, sort of a short piece of what I hope will be a longer piece in the memoir I'm imagining. And if I can get these reading glasses out, I'll be able to do a better job with it. Hold on.
Yeah.
It's a real fancy case, and okay, there. All right.
Fancy cases often come with the most heartache.
So, alrighty. The whole section will be called "We All Have a Vietnam War Story." And all of our stories connect. Some of my story is about other people's stories, my mother and my father, especially. No, let me restate the connection. My story is my story, which includes my story about my father and my story about my mother. I cannot ever know or tell their stories. My story is Dad going to Vietnam, set during the first 20 years of my life as the daughter of an Air Force officer and a military wife. I was their firstborn, born 10 months and 3 days after they married at a courthouse, or at the courthouse in Greenville, South Carolina. My brother was born 4.5 years later, and Dad had been stationed in France for a year between these births. Indirect memories come through family lore and photographs. I was a 17-year-old junior in high school in 1971 when Dad went overseas. Deployed is the term I hear veterans use these days. During these military family years, Dad often was gone for several weeks at a time, on TDY as they called it in the Air Force, although location was never mentioned. Dad would be gone, Dad would come home, Mom would have rearranged the furniture and kept the children in line. We would be glad to see him and knew he would go away again. It's routine. 1971 was different. He would be gone a year and we knew where he was going. He would be stationed in Thailand. Key information portrayed and perceived as safer. Thailand as in not Vietnam, not quite in the Vietnam War, just in the area. Doing what? Flying airplanes as usual. What I'm not remembering, saying goodbye to Dad. No memory of when, where, how, what. What I'm not remembering, whether I ever talked with any of my family about where Dad was, what he was doing, whether he was safe, or what danger he was in. What I am remembering, Dad and Mom exchanging reel-to-reel tape recordings, common practice among military families. After Mom and John and I had listened together, Dad would say it was time for John and me to leave the room so he could talk privately with Mom. Same ending with the tapes we sent to him. What I'm not remembering, what any of us said. A lack of reflection sees me nervous, anxious, hoping to say the right thing, not the wrong thing, whatever those were. Be happy, be concerned, ask about what he was doing. What I am remembering, Dad asked me to tape record some music and send it to him. He didn't hear familiar music over there, he explained, and it would be nice to have some. I think he said they, too, referring to the military personnel with whom he was stationed. What songs? Just whatever was popular or that I liked. Old or new? It doesn't matter. How many? Whatever you can do, just send some music. Okay, Dad, I will. I fretted over that tape for weeks into months. Wasn't sure I could record it correctly. Wasn't confident in choosing the tunes. Couldn't get myself started. Stuck in anxiety about doing a good job. Being a good daughter, not failing or disappointing. Not confident about what to do and how to do it right. I never sent him a music tape.
Ooh.
I remember to this moment letting Dad down. It was the only thing he had asked for, and I did not do it. What a punk. I'm further humiliated that this is the memory that stands out to me over so much time. It's a selfish memory, all about me. Knowledge and imagination now bring to mind the sounds and silences he was enduring, and how a homemade tape of current American tunes could have given him and them a break, some ease. I know all the advice about letting this go and forgiving myself. I am never letting it go. I cannot take back the behavior of my anxious teenager, even as I continue to remedy my behaviors as an anxious older adult, writing to heal. The best I can try to do is offer up some gift in the place of the tape. It's such a tiny, terrible memory about not supporting the troops. What I don't remember, whether I apologized. I think I did, and I think he said it was okay. It would have been that lame and that simple if it had happened. I never remember this story, this piece of father-daughter history, this part of my Vietnam War story, without weeping.
I went to work in Cherokee, and one of my friends in Cherokee was a wonderful man named Carl Lambert. Did you ever know Carl Lambert?
I believe I did.
He was something else. He told me stories, and we used to go to the Holiday Inn and eat lunch, and he would tell me stories that just stunned me, and we'd end up staying 2 hours sitting there in the Holiday Inn and him telling me stories. And he told me once that he was at the Cherokee Indian Fair, and of course we always called it the Cherokee Indian Fair back then, and it got to a point where that was considered an unpleasant term. It had to be something else, and they call it something else now. But it was a rough place. You used to go to the Cherokee Indian Fair, and all kinds of dangerous things would go on there, It's a little secret gambling going on here. I saw my first naked woman at the Indian Fair.
Coochie,
So,
coochie.
only one for a long time, too. I think I was 13, 14, you know. She called herself the Tijuana Wildcat. And, well, that's another story. That's another story. I might tell that story sometime if I hadn't already told it. But anyway, Carl told me that he loved the Indian Fair. And it was something. I absolutely loved the Indian Fair. A time came when I didn't love it because they changed it. And when they changed it, it wasn't fun anymore. But before they changed it, you know, there were bingo joints and hoochie coochie shows, they called them back then. And Carl told me that he was hanging around, he would stay all night, you know. It was an event. And lots of Cherokees would come out of Big Cove, particularly women, and they would bring a quilt and sleep on the ground for the whole Indian Fair, you know, and eat in the food joints there. I mean, it was an event, a dramatic event to live through. Well, one night Carl was prowling around after everybody had gone, and he found a monkey. And it was in a sack, and it didn't look too good. And he asked the man about it, and he says, "Oh, that monkey, it has diarrhea. I don't think it's going to live." And Carl says, "Well, I'll give you $10 for it." And the guy thought about it, and he finally said, "Okay." And Carl took that monkey home. Well, that's another story. Now, this is my story, and Carl is in it. I love backstories and way stories run off and become other things and multiply and change their. I don't rarely remember the origin of this story. I've told it several times over the years, but it always changes when I start writing it down. It takes over 10 years, but I suddenly find myself making an abrupt turn in a side road. Suddenly I'm lost in Little Canada, or maybe Cades Cove, or I'm almost out of gas, and it's scary, but then up ahead there are bright lights, and it looks like another country, and my God, it's the Cherokee Indian Fair. I vaguely remember a German story some 50 years ago about a monkey that unintentionally killed itself with his owner's straight razor, and then he's been resurrected for me because wrapped in a burlap sack on a cold night in October, full of bells and whistles, laughter, strange smells, cotton candy, charred meat, and a monkey that has diarrhea and shivers in a foul sack in a dark corner, and an old man named Carl is plodding it with a stick. "Still alive," said the old man. "Yeah, well, so?" said the man with a bowler hat on. "Well, I'll give you $10. The bowler hat snorted, and he said, "Okay. But let me be honest with you, sir. I don't think he's going to live another day. Yeah, I'm just saying." The old man lifted the monkey from the sack, and he stares at the little wizened face. "I'm going to call him Abner." "You want a clean sack?" "No, I'll just drop him in here." And that monkey settles inside the old man's bill overalls. Smells of tobacco and beef jerky. "Well, suit yourself," said the bowler hat. And he snatches the bill from the old man's fingers with practiced ease. And so Abner came to live with an old man
in an old farmhouse in Big Cove on the Cherokee Indian Reservation. Carl fed him cornbread and buttermilk and souse meat, and that monkey thrived. I keep losing my place. It would help, I guess, if I put my glasses on. So he lived with an old man in a farmhouse in Big Cove on the Cherokee Indian Reservation. Carl fed him cornbread, buttermilk, and souse meat, and the monkey thrived. And before long, he was swinging in the rafters, peering through the windows at that strange world, a world of chickens and hounds, a cow, mules. And although Abner came when he was called, he was a free agent. That meant that he did what he wanted to do. And when he ventured outside and explored the barn, he frightened the chickens. Abner got a perverse pleasure out of reducing that chicken house to pandemonium when he swung through the rafters and leaving a storm of feathers and dust behind him. In time, he learned to ride that hound dog. And he spent exciting nights riding that poor dog through the moonlight. Deep into the forest. He left in his wake a kind of tidal wave of cackles and screams and hoots and trills as the creatures of the wood took note of the passage. And Abner still came when he called him, but his absence from Carl's kitchen became longer. A few days and then an entire week, Carl's neighbors kept him informed about the disturbances. Tales of Abner pursuing foxes on the back of a blue-tick hound. They said he made the dogs run faster by biting their ears.
Oh.
His legs wrapped around them like a Saturday cowboy. People complained when Abner took to plucking chickens and leaving great clouds of feathers wafting through the woods. Dog owners threatened to shoot him. A kind of a legend developed about Abner, the mad monkey of the Smokies. Carl was a popular storyteller, and on winter nights he would entertain the neighbors with stories of Abner's adventures. And on one of his trips into town, Abner had raided a craft shop, came away with a rebel cap, and that became a permanent item. And many teachers came out of the Smokies telling incoherent stories about a monkey with a rebel cap on who attacked the campgrounds at night and then vanished into the darkness with gaudy clothes and candy and food. But when the heavy snows came and the campgrounds closed, Abner came home. Carl said that it was a kind of a hibernation. He guessed, deprived of excitement, Abner became morose and depressed, and he spent hours staring out the window at the snow. Then there came a year when he didn't return. For several years, there were still stories of a monkey riding the wind-buffed hemlocks and staring down at startled travelers. Now, let's change gears. Lost my place again. Let's change gears, and let me say that I've always identified with Abner. The wild monkey of the Smokies. Hell, I am Abner. From the time he was plucked from that dark cage until he vanished into the dark wood, I felt an empathy with that solitary creature. He lived in a world without any companionship. There wasn't any other monkeys out there. And although he made efforts to befriend and live with other creatures, dogs, humans, chickens, I am. a solitary being. Yeah, I've tried to, but I have so little in common with others, it's a hopeless pursuit. I guess it's brooding and melancholy that puts people off. A few friends that I have vanished. They've gone off to pursue more pleasant relationships. I mean, who could you expect? And they have nothing to offer, which I have nothing to offer but brooding. Yes, I'm only fit company for Abner. And I think I would enjoy that, Abner and I, high and a hemlock, both of us with rebel caps on, riding the wind. Some have abandoned me and so they can devote more time to acquiring fame of some sort. A few have gone in search of God, a search that takes all kinds of time and energy. Adieu, travelers, pilgrims. Abner and I bid you farewell. You all go on ahead now. We'll catch up. I've been thinking that I would maybe teach Abner to read. It would be quite a challenge, but then we've got nothing but time. Certainly there was wonderful possibilities. What would Abner think of Cormac McCarthy? I think he would love A.E. Houseman. How about the Rubaiyat? Hey, then there's Yeats, a poet that is after a while Nucky's heart. For like Abner, I was born into a world where both reading and friendship are becoming a kind of lost arts. And perhaps Abner and I could start a secret sect that read stuff. Rediscover poetry. Write a play. I heard once that Abner loved Elvis. Well, maybe I could lure him out. Maybe if I go up in Deep Creek tonight and I sing Fools Rush In, I just might tease him out. I do a pretty good Elvis when there's no one around to judge. Maybe if I sing long enough, he will hear. Only rivers flow to the sea, to the open arms of the sea. Come out, Abner. Come to Rhodes Cove and sit with me in the fog and listen to the rain crows on Painter's Knob. I think their sad coo will soothe your mad heart. We still got a little while before the street lights and the pavements runs us off into some other dark holler, to Black Rock or Linville Gorge. I'll be coming home. Wait for me. Okay.